Hello and welcome back to the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. My name is Eric Herlock. Today is Monday, July 26th. I am here in the RV in Fort Benton, Montana. I'm looking out the window and I see the Missouri River gently flowing by. We have been on quite a journey these past few weeks. My last episode was recorded in Northern California, but since then we've traveled through Oregon, Washington, and Idaho into Montana. Today's show will be my interview with the folks from Queen of Hearts and Northwest Fiber in Eastern Oregon. Stay tuned for that. Here's a quick sponsor message. This episode and this National Hemp Tour are made possible in part by New Holland Agriculture. Hemp, the next frontier in agriculture, is here, and New Holland is ready to help you grow, harvest, and process it. They're partnering with researchers, engineers, and farmers to continue to move the industry forward. They've allied with the National Hemp Association to swiftly return hemp crops onto farmland. And they're working hard to solve the unique challenges of hemp production. With decades of innovation in agriculture, New Holland can help you capitalize on this new frontier. Now that's the pioneering spirit. You can get a head start in growing, harvesting, and profiting from hemp. Go check out betterhempharvest.com. This episode is also made possible with support from Bish Enterprises and Hemp Harvest Works. With over 40 years of experience innovating agricultural machinery to solve the complicated issues that farmers face with smart, inexpensive solutions, Bish Enterprises and Hemp Harvest Works provide growing and harvesting equipment for today's hemp producers. Focused on solutions for hemp producers whether they grow for flour, fiber, or grain, Hemp Harvest Works has the equipment and the experience to meet your needs. Visit Hemp Harvest Works today at hempharvestworks.com or call 402-849-2674 for a one-on-one equipment consultation. And of course, we have ongoing support from IND Hemp here in Fort Benton, Montana. And I'd like to give a shout out to Rose Downs North America and Pterodon Hemp. To find out more about sponsorship opportunities, send an email to podcast@lancasterfarming.com. All right, so let's get on with today's show. So, as I said in the beginning, we are sitting here in Fort Benton, Montana. There is sort of a hemp event here tomorrow with the folks from IND Hemp and a bunch of other people in the hemp space on the grain and fiber side. Ken Elliott from IND Hemp says it's the movers and shakers of the hemp industry. So I look forward to a big, long day of hemp stuff tomorrow, and I will be reporting on that for next week's show. But today I wanted to share my interview with you. Last Friday, I sat down with Tonia Farman and Gregg Gnecco from Queen of Hearts Hemp and Northwest Fiber. And this is the interview that came out of it. Hope you enjoy it. Hope you learn something. And then after the interview, I'll tell some stories from the road. Here we go. Tonia and Gregg, welcome to the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. How are you doing?
Great, thank you.
Could you introduce yourselves?
Sure, I'm Tonia Farman with Hemp Northwest and Queen of Hearts Superfoods.
And I'm Gregg Gnecco, also co-founder of Hemp Northwest and work with Tonia and Queen of Hearts. And you may also know me from my day job at IND Hemp.
Yep. All right, so tell me where we are and what it is you do here.
Well, we are in the Dalles, Oregon, up in northern Oregon, right on the Columbia River, on the border of Washington and Oregon. And we're here in our facility. This is where we process, actually we don't do as much processing anymore, but we are cold pressing for hemp seed oil. We package the seed cake from the cold pressing into products for horses and other animals. And then we have our Queen of Hearts line that is a human food product, right? And so it's all of the wonderful nutritional seed oil and hemp hearts and protein powder. And then we are just starting to launch into some wonderful value-added products because we know all these ingredients are so great together into other products. So that's really exciting.
Cool. So how did you get started, or maybe why did you get started? Why hemp?
Oh boy, that's a big story.
You want me to try? I'm trying to give the quick.
Why don't you
version.
you do the quick version? I'm better at the long.
And some of Eric's listeners obviously know my story. Came out of a 25-year career in action sports and realized it was time for a change at the time that they started growing hemp in Washington. And my amazing wife said, you need to quit your crazy job and have a better life. And what are you going to do? And I said, let's get into this hemp thing. And knew lots about fiber and more about cannabinoids, and went and met with some farmers and came home one day and I said to Tonia, I said, do you have any idea how healthy the seed is, the grain, the hemp hearts? And Tonia went over to the cupboard and grabbed a bag of hemp hearts, said, do you have any idea I've been feeding you this for like 10 years? And that was our synergy of being relevant for both of us with an interest in hemp. And let Tonia speak more to how her interest came out of nutrition and what she was doing.
Yeah, so I came from the world of cancer, and I had built a nonprofit in cancer survivorship for 12 years. And I got to the point, I was working with cancer survivors post-treatment. So seeing a lot of the long-term effects of treatment, of just the healthcare system and how broken it was. And it made me feel like I was not solving the problem. I really saw that there was a much deeper need to focus on improving our food and agriculture systems, and I wanted to be a part of that. And I dove into nutrition and whole foods and really, even on a bigger level, just what our food and agriculture system in the history has been here in the United States and how we got to the point where we're at right now. And I wanted to really dive into something that was progressive, that we could be a part of growing here in the United States and not be reliant on other countries, and really something that was as good for the planet as is good for our health. And hemp just kept getting thrown in front of me. And I had no experience with hemp other than, like Greg said, the hemp seeds in our cupboard. So I, from a nutritional standpoint, was just so intrigued, and I just dove into it, and I really am still enamored by how incredible this plant is just nutritionally, aside from all the other wonderful benefits. So, you know.
I think maybe our listeners are familiar with the nutritional benefits, but if you could just give me some highlights. What is it about it from a nutritional point of view that really sticks out for you?
Sure. So the biggest thing is it is a really healthy fatty acid complex seed. So there's a lot of plant proteins out there and seeds that people claim are superfoods. So a lot of them come from other countries, chia seeds, acai, coconut and such. We're not growing those here in the United States. The other thing is it's a very digestible plant protein. So it's very clean. It has a wonderful amino acid profile. And then also in the omega profile, we have omega-3s, omega-6, and omega-9s. Typically, Americans get a lot of omega-6s in their diets, or really, typically the meat omega-6. That's where we're getting a lot of those unhealthy omegas. And the hemp seed actually has a really fantastic omega profile. The omega-6 gamma-linoleic acid, remember that one, GLA for short, is one of the only plant proteins on the planet that has such a high amount of this. It's a wonderful anti-inflammatory, and we're seeing incredible just benefits just in the on the hemp seed oil and hemp heart side. It just is really wonderful. So not to get too deep into that, just that proteins, amino acid, the omegas, and then just the wonderful minerals and vitamins too that we kind of don't really even think about. Vitamins A's and C and D and magnesium and manganese and
it's
phosphorus.
all in there, huh?
It's all in there. It truly is a superfood.
Cool. Well, tell me how you source your seeds. Like, how do you work with farmers? Talk about the supply chain a bit if you can.
Yeah, I'll jump in there because that's always kind of been my role and continues to be my role as we've come together. In the early years, it was find anybody that would be interested in growing grain in a place where a lot of cannabis flowers of all types, hemp and THC are grown, and a lot of people don't want anybody growing anything with pollen. And so we started working going into 2018 and finding seed, and ended up making a good relationship with the Colville tribes, the Confederated Tribes of Colville. Some of your listeners may remember Doug Fine talking about it in his book about that crop up there on the edge of the river. And they were the only ones in Washington in 2018 that grew a grain crop. So we were there with them on that one. That was actually the first crop that was processed at our facility, previous to this facility, and brought to market. And really, we're proud. None of us made any money. Everybody struggled to get it over, but together, with our desire to bring a product to market and their desire to grow hemp, we got that to market just about a month before the Farm Bill was signed in 2018. So it's a little feather in the cap of forging ahead and doing it. In 2019, they decided to grow some CBD flower up there on the reservation, so they didn't want to grow grain again that year, and we looked for other growers. The Washington law that year didn't get signed and changed until April 1st, and that was what was restricting any seed that wasn't imported through the DEA. And so we lost the ability to really get production at that point, but we did work with a great grower in Sam and Nash's Organics up on the Olympic Peninsula, of all places, and trialed X59 and CFX2 on a few acres up there. And then also met Ben Brimlow that year in Walla Walla and realized that he'd gotten some seed in the ground. And fast forward, because we can't tell 3 years of story, but going into 2020, we'd gotten to know the folks at I&D Hemp and knew that they were working with the X59 variety, which we'd already trialed and proven here. And we started talking to them on seed. And so Hemp Northwest and I&D Hemp worked in agreement where, we would bring to the table the Northwest farmers that we've been trying to get on board, and they would provide seed and provide contracts. And that would give us access to some grain to crush here in Oregon, Washington, at our facility, but also they had the capacity and support to support whatever we wouldn't be able to take and take it back to Montana. And it was really the first time after 3 years of 18, 19, 20, finally getting real production contracts. And 2020, in partnership with I&D Hemp, had 3 different growers on about 300 acres across the hills of the Palouse. And I think I sent you some images of that, Eric, what it looks like on the hills. And then COVID hit right about the time that we were going into planting, and we realized that the work we were doing here and the work that I&D Hemp was doing had a lot of similarities, and that's at the point where I had the opportunity to shift a little bit and work on the I&D Hemp side of the fence, which still ties into our supply chain here. So Tonia runs both the Hemp Northwest and Queen of Hearts businesses, and I work obviously in my role at I&D Hemp, and it still allows us to support Washington and Oregon farmers growing grain and scale up working together.
And I would also add that the first 3 years of running this was really just constant education. So in the Pacific Northwest, where cannabis, recreational cannabis, was legal before hemp and has been for a while, people were quite confused about grain hemp. And so we kind of fell into this role of educating Department of Agriculture reps, state level, federal level. They would bring us in for different events, university events. All sorts of different opportunities where we could educate people, because people didn't know, they were confused. And that really got our name out, but also more just that, hey, there are people that are working with grain here in the United States, let alone the Pacific Northwest. And that was, I think, really eye-opening for a lot of different stakeholders in hemp. And Oregon State University being one of them. They, Oregon's a very big CBD state. And, we're kind of we've kind of been the redheaded stepchildren. They come knocking on the door, hey, we're the grain people, but, don't point your guns at us, because we're not growing any grain here, right? They've been wonderful. OSU and the Global Hemp Innovation Center has been a really great collaborative partner, and we've connected them with, some farmers too in Washington and Oregon. So, really that role was, it's been challenging, because I think that we really took for granted. We thought that people already knew all the different, the scope of hemp, and they don't. And so that it's finally nice to see that people are starting to learn about grain, what it is for. Believe it or not everyone knows it's a superfood. We still get people that ask if they can get high from hemp seeds. And I think that connection with IND Hemp, we had a lot of growers that here in Washington, Oregon, that would ask us, for all sorts of information on growing, and we have started to really kind of guide that more toward Montana and IND Hemp, and just because it's not something that we see as our role anymore.
And we learned, and I'll be 100% honest, we learned that we don't know farming. And we learned a lot, but we knew hemp farming. And so we would go to farmers, and it's really, I talked to a lot of growers, every year we meet with different growers all over the state. Like, does it work where they grow potatoes? You get to the point where you're like, cost per acre, and you do the math, it's like, nope, not going to work there. And in the early years,
Sorry. Stifling, maybe some water. Sorry about that. I was trying to hold it as long as I could.
You're good.
Don't worry.
It's funny, down in the San Luis Valley of Colorado, there's a lot of potatoes down there, and it does work in their rotation for potatoes. And it actually, if you put hemp in the ground before potatoes, it controls the nematodes. And so
we gotta find out. I've heard different language. Yeah. And really, it's I don't know where we go back and where you.
We'll edit
start
it,
on
right?
I'm sorry, I don't have any glass.
Oh,
right
that's
now.
fine. That's awesome. Thank you.
So what we learned as we grew and started working with others, especially IND Hemp, and when IND Hemp brought Ben on as an agronomist early on, is that everything that we knew about farming, we knew from learning about hemp farming. And so we would talk to different growers in different areas in terms of hemp and start to map things out and see if it would work. And in a lot of places around here, it doesn't work. And especially all the areas where all the guys that are growing cannabis flower are worried, that's not where it works. That's where it goes good to grow flowers. And one of the things we really are, proud to finally realize is finding where it fits. And that's a term I use all over. Where do we grow grain in Oregon and Washington? We grow it out where they grow other grains. Hey, and out there, that's where they own drills and combines and have the bins and the infrastructure. And on the west side of the state, it's one of the best cannabis flower and other flower and niche produce, specialty food growing. And so everything's got a place, and we can all exist out here and share that space. So there is the ability to graze, hemp grain and now hemp fiber out in Oregon, and there's a lot of interest in that.
Cool. Can you talk about how you've developed markets?
Yes, that is really exciting because where the markets really are, and I don't think this is a surprise to anyone in the hemp industry, but is really in value-added products. And I mean that in truly adding value, not just to the product, but the hemp grain and hemp nutritional seed market as well. I mean, we are finding that it just is really hard to compete with just selling hemp hearts and hemp seed oil when you have the Canadians and their 20-year history. And so it has been, it's really been an opportunity for us to look around and see how can we get creative here. And it doesn't, you don't have to go far because the hemp seed has such great characteristics as an oil seed. It adds creaminess to plant-based products, so it can replace dairy, really. It adds obviously a wonderful nutritional profile, and it has a nutty flavor that can replace sesame seeds or other nuts and seeds that maybe don't have the nutritional profile. So it has, just in value added, meaning another product that might use hemp hearts or protein or meal in those products. That's one really great opportunity. And that's kind of how, for Queen of Hearts, we got into developing this dressing line, is through the 3 core ingredients of the hemp seed. So we're using the whole seed and its co-products, and really going for a superfood product. And, the challenge with that is right now we just, and really in general, it doesn't have a long shelf life. So we're trying to figure out how can we produce a product that has all those wonderful nutrients from the hemp seeds, the oil, the protein, but has a shelf life that can sit on the shelves of Target and Whole Foods and compete with other products that don't have those ingredients. So yeah, the markets are there, and it's just it's a marketing challenge for sure. We don't really want to be the snowplow, as you'd say. You know, the ones that are the car behind the snowplow are always the ones that are the ones that don't have to lead, right? And this is a big marketing and educational opportunity and challenge at the same time.
Cool. So do you go out to farmers markets? And
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing farmers markets for the Queen of Hearts brand I think we're going on our fourth year.
4 years.
And now we're in, wholesale accounts and some bigger retail markets in Portland, and hoping to expand to up and down the West Coast with that. And then we're going to be launching at the Fancy Food Show in New York City, which is one of the first food trade shows since COVID. So that's pretty exciting there. And people are starting to understand, I think, after COVID, the benefits of more whole, and I like to say slow foods. And I think really connecting with the consumer on that is where we're finding some, we're gaining some feedback that, I can relate to that. People understand immune boosting. They're starting to understand what whole food means. And so I would say it was a lot harder before COVID to communicate those characteristics.
And I would just add, and horses.
Yeah.
And the flip side as well, and just the overall market and the slow, and Tonia said, 4 years, we're still working into the human food market. We've really had good opportunities locally with the hemp seed oil and the protein, and even a value-added product that we do for a company here. And so it's gotten us into the rodeo area. And so it's, hemp has all these uses, which also means it can be part of all these different communities. And who knew that, I didn't know when we got into this that barrel racing horses do really well with hemp protein and hemp oil in their diet. And those people tell their friends, and there's 2 or 3 companies in the Northwest that have different markets selling these products. So
cool. Can you talk about what processing equipment you have? Like specifically, what are you using here to crush the seeds?
Yeah, so in detail, we went with
medium detail.
Okay, medium detail. We have 2 single head presses, oil presses. So it's a stainless steel screw and tube that crushes the seed. You get oil and a cake out of that. It looks kind of like a pellet. We have a small scale, kind of lab scale protein separator that came from a company in Germany that grinds the cake and does separate the protein. But I will say, and I'll say honestly, for people, it's hard when you're small. And nowadays, mostly we're bringing in product from our partners in Montana that have it on a scale, and not to diverse, but just to go into the food safety side of things. We have to pay the same lab costs for a 200-pound run as you would pay for a 50,000-pound truck. And the reality of this game is you've got to be doing 50,000-pound trucks, or you give everything away and paying all the lab tests. So we've done it here. We've done it for a couple of years where we've brought seed in from the farm, we've had it cleaned, we've crushed the oil, we've bottled it, we've done all our food safety, and we've gotten it into the market. But as we grow, it makes sense, and for the whole supply chain, to find who does what well. And we're really good at value added, and we're a good distribution point here where we're have great access to all of the Northwest and into Northern California, which you might not have in the center of the country where they're right next to the farm and can take truckloads in every day.
The seed press, who makes that?
That is actually made by a company called Tocool. We did buy that from Robert Burns, who sponsoring the tour with Rosedowns.
Right.
Also represented some other equipment before going fully in with Rosedowns. So I'm sure if we were buying it now, we'd buy the Rosedowns version. But a lot of people in the industry have found Robert, and we were young and naive, and I got to say, Tonia took a big risk because it was her bank account in that moment. We wired tens of thousands of dollars away to somebody we didn't know, and had this belief that these presses were going to show up and that crop was going to come out of the field that year, and we were going to be able to make this product. So it's been quite a roller coaster.
An exercise in faith.
Yeah. And on top of that, you asked about equipment. We've shifted into more bottling equipment. We bottle both 250 and 500 ml bottles. We bottle in 1 gallon jugs for the horse crowd with the hemp seed oil. We're packaging hemp hearts here. Tonia makes the dressings here, and we've just ordered, she talked a little bit about going into the value added and the shelf stability. And I don't want to steal her thunder, but make sure she touches on it. But she worked with the Food Innovation Center of OSU for the last, 4 or 5 plus months, to take her dressings that have been fresh at the farmer's market to a shelf-stable function. And they're just on the tail end of that, finalizing for that process approval. And we've ordered equipment to be able to bring that production here. So very soon, Queen of Hearts, 3 hemp ingredient-based dressings made in the Dalles, Oregon.
Awesome. Advice for farmers or processors who would want to get into hemp as a food?
Ooh, well, I would say, one, know your strengths. I think one thing that we did at the beginning, we thought that we could do it all. And we quickly found and realized where we're really strong, which is building relationships, bringing products to market. And like the farming side for us, although we were intrigued and we loved connecting with farmers, and we still love that, it's just not knowing the farming side, it was not our strength. So if you're coming into this, like, know what you love, what kind of brings you joy, and then also be open to constant change because right now we're having supply chain issues. Everything from packaging is huge. I mean, 6 months out, you got to put POs in and know well in advance, what you're planning, forecasting and such. Ingredients as well. And also the food safety, I've learned probably so much more about food safety than I want to know, but I need, everyone needs to realize, like, get into this. And this is not like especially from what I've heard, a lot of companies started out in CBD, in their garage or in their basement, and you need to be dialed in on the safety side. I mean, you do not want to be responsible for, the lives of thousands of people, and you are when you're producing a food product. And we take that very seriously. And that's why I went to working with the Food Innovation Center, because it has the food scientists and the safety teams that know how to do it right, and be open to working with outside people that are experts that know better than you.
That's good advice. In the very beginning, I'm going to edit this part out, but in the beginning, did you say your names when you did the introduction?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our listeners?
Well, I'll just blatantly say if everybody eats more hemp, the hemp food industry will continue to grow. And that comes in a lot of points, so shameless plug for Eat Hemp.
Yeah, and I would also say we are, as a society, we get on what is the next hot thing. And so, like, right now what I've heard in food is adaptogenic mushrooms are just like the hot thing, right? Well, if people understood and were open to and got over the stigma of hemp as a nutritional product, they would see that it by far blows away anything out there. It's like fish oil, for instance. We've been consuming fish oil for, centuries because that's what doctors and naturopaths and our parents told us what to do. Well, we know that right now fish oil comes from a very unsustainable and really poorly managed system, and it's a horrible product to be not just consuming but purchasing and supporting. And you have hemp seed oil as a supplement is absolutely blowing away fish oil as just in its nutritional properties, and look what it does environmentally in supporting our farmers. And that's what we want to do is build a supply chain, from seed all the way to sale here domestically in the United States. And that's really why we got into it so naively in the beginning.
Yep. So if you're looking for hemp seed products in the Northwest, find Tonia at Hemp Northwest.
All right. Well, thank you both for your time today. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks for stopping by.
All right, well, there you go. That was the interview with Gregg and Tonia. Eastern Oregon is, that Columbia River. Such a beautiful drive along that river in this place called the Dalles. I had no idea that such a place even existed. But there's been a lot of that sort of discovery on my part on this trip. So on the last episode, I was recording in the RV in Humboldt County, Northern California. And then from there, we were headed up the coast. We took the Coastal Highway, Route 101, from Northern California. One of the most beautiful drives I've ever been on. We stopped at a place called Prairie Creek to see the redwoods. And I have seen the redwoods just one other time. That was back in Muir Woods, back in the 90s. So it was nice to see these big trees again. My kids saw them for the first time, which was great to experience them experiencing the trees. It was at that time that we got some bad news from home. It turns out that our old cat Daisy passed away. So my nephew, who was watching our house, he very diligently buried her in the place where we bury all of our wonderful pets. Haven't told my kids yet because we don't need 2 weeks of grief. We want to just keep this road trip moving and try to keep it as positive as possible. So we do have a little bit of heartbreak to look forward to when we get home. But just a heads up, we are going to get a couple of Maine Coon kittens as soon as we can to sort of, alleviate some of that grief. But so now you know. Don't tell my kids just yet. I'm sorry, girls, if you're ever listening to this. We had to keep it a secret just because. Anyway, so from the redwoods, there's this place on the Coastal Highway called Last Chance Grade, which I had never heard about before. But in our campground in Redding, California, a guy I was talking to, he was like, "Oh, you got to watch out for this. It's only open a certain time during the day, so you have to time it right." And we did time it right. It closed at 3 p.m. and we got through at 2:59. So we made it through Last Chance Grade and we made it on up to the Oregon coast. We stopped for a little while on Gold Beach. Yeah, such a beautiful place up there. We drove a little further north, and then at Bandon, Oregon, we went east and we headed to my friend's little farm out in Looking Glass, Oregon. My friend Matt, he's got a little vegetable operation there. He's also a full-time chemist, and he is dreaming about planting grapes this fall. He wants to be a winemaker. So yeah, I think he'd be a great winemaker. And his girlfriend Tonia was there, and she's a listener to the show and has been for a long time. In fact, listened to our show even before she knew that I was friends with her boyfriend Matt. And she's not a hemp farmer. She's not a hemp producer. I guess she maybe is a hemp enthusiast. I don't know, but her reasoning for listening to the show is great. She finds my voice very soothing, and she listens to our show to fall asleep. So I'll just say good night, Tonia, and thank you for listening. From there, we drove up to Hood River, Oregon, where we met up with Gregg Gnecco from I&D Hemp and, like you just heard, Northwest Fiber and Queen of Hearts. And he just was very hospitable to us. He took us up to Mount Hood, where there's like a glacier up there. So, we got to see snow in the middle of July. And he gave us this piece of just fresh caught salmon, this beautiful piece of fresh fish, and took it back to our RV park. And I started cooking it up in my cast iron skillet, and I ran out of propane like 5 minutes into it. And I was like, oh no, this beautiful piece of fish is going to go to waste. But no, I wrapped it up and I put it on ice. And the next morning I went out and got more propane, and we cooked this beautiful fish for breakfast. So thank you, Greg. That was fantastic. And so from there, we drove further east to a place called Adams, Oregon, where we met up with a builder by the name of John Green and his wife, Marissa. And I'm going to publish that conversation on this next episode that I'm also making today. So I hope you enjoy that. And then I'll pick up our travel stories from there. All right, well, thanks for listening to this show. My name is Eric Herlock. I'm the digital editor at Lancaster Farming Newspaper, the greatest agricultural newspaper in the world. And until next time, I'll see you in the newspaper or on the road, whichever comes first.
industrial hemp.
Episode 147 of the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast is copyright 2021 by Lancaster Farming Newspaper, which is part of the Steinman Communications family. Today's show was written and recorded, edited, and produced by Eric Herlock, and any music you hear throughout the show is courtesy of Tin Bird Shadow.